How does a country known for deserts, flat plains and beach culture consistently produce some of the world's top mountain climbers in professional cycling? Australia doesn't have the Alps, or the Pyrenees, or even real high-altitude roads like Colombia or Italy. And yet, it gave us Cadel Evans, the first Aussie to win the Tour de France, Richie Porte, the mountain master of Sky and Ineos, and Jai Hindley, the Giro d'Italia champion. This is the paradox of Australian cycling, a land without mountains, dominating mountain stages. So, how does that happen? Let's dive into the unexpected reasons why Australia is a powerhouse in world cycling, and why its flat terrain might actually be part of the secret. Before we unravel the modern science, let's go back, because cycling in Australia isn't new. In fact, by the late 1800s, it was one of the most popular sports in the country. The Warrnambool to Melbourne race, first held in 1895, is one of the oldest road races in the world. And velodromes popped up in towns across the nation by the early 1900s. Cycling was accessible, cheap, fast, and uniquely Australian, gritty, independent, and outdoors. By the 1950s, Aussie cyclists were competing internationally, even winning Olympic medals. But the real turning point? That came decades later. Hey, quick pause before we move on. If you're enjoying this deep dive and love content about pro cycling, do us a big favour. Hit the like button, subscribe, and drop a comment about your favourite Aussie cyclist. Now, let's get back to Australia's cycling revolution. In the 1980s, Australia was frustrated with its Olympic performance, so it built the Australian Institute of Sport, AIS, a scientific approach to elite athletic development. Cycling became one of the crown jewels. Through the AIS and Cycling Australia, young talents were scouted, coached and sent overseas. Aussie coaches leaned into physiology, sports science and data years before it was mainstream. Names like Shane Bannon and Neil Stevens helped create a structured pathway from youth clubs to the World Tour. And many of today's champions, like Simon Gerrans, Michael Rogers and Rohan Dennis, came through that pipeline. The system didn't need mountains, it needed machines. You might be wondering, how do you become a world-class climber on flat roads? Well, consider this. Australia's flat terrain forces riders to develop raw power, aerodynamics and mental resilience. Endless wind, brutal heat, long straight roads that test your focus more than your legs. It's not glamorous, but it builds something valuable. Engine capacity. Training in harsh conditions taught Aussies how to suffer. Riders would go for hours with minimal elevation, but at punishing speeds. It's like building a diesel engine before putting it on a mountain road. Australia's obsession with track cycling created a hidden advantage. Track demands explosive power, cadence control, and laser focus. Riders learn how to pace, push, and perfect their technique in controlled environments. And for many Aussie stars, like Caleb Ewan, Rohan Dennis, and Michael Matthews, the velodrome was the first step. From there, the leap to road cycling is tactical, not physical. In fact, many World Tour pros credit their track discipline for their success in breakaways, sprints, and time trials. The real transformation of an Australian cyclist doesn't happen at home. It happens over 15,000 kilometres away, across oceans, time zones, and entire cultures. It happens in the hills of Tuscany, the switchbacks of the Pyrenees, the wet winds of Belgium, and the snowy mornings of Andorra. Because one thing sets Australian cyclists apart. Eventually, they all leave. Unlike European riders who can grow up racing local classics or climbing high-altitude roads just outside their hometowns, Australians have to take a giant leap of faith just to be in the game. Most leave home before they turn 20. They leave behind their family, friends, the language, and the lifestyle they know for a shot at something bigger. And it's far from glamorous. Their first contracts are often with development squads or continental teams. The pay? Modest at best. The schedule? Sparse. The days? Long, cold, and often lonely. But this crucible, the struggle of surviving in a foreign land with everything to prove, is where champions are made. For many Aussie pros, that new beginning starts in Girona, Spain. Why Girona? Because it's a cyclist paradise. Quiet roads, year-round good weather, easy access to serious climbs, and a massive community of pro riders. It's also a cultural hub. Coffee shops like La Fabrica or Espresso Mafia aren't just places to refuel. They're meeting grounds where World Tour pros swap stories and connect. Here, the next generation trains alongside the world's best. Legendary climbs like Rocacorba, Els Àngels, and the nearby Pyrenees and Andorra become their new classroom. They learn how to suffer at altitude, manage pacing, and master mountain tactics. And just as importantly, they learn what it takes to survive. Leaving home early teaches these young riders more than just physical strength. It teaches them resilience, adaptability, discipline. They learn how to live on their own, cook their meals, recover without a support team, and show up every single day, even when no one's watching. Former world champion Cadel Evans said it best. You go to Europe and suddenly no one cares who you were in Australia. You have to start from scratch. That's what toughens you. This reality creates self-sufficient riders, people who don't rely on comfort to perform and who thrive under pressure. And they're not entirely on their own. The Australian Institute of Sport, AIS, and Cycling Australia play a massive role in making this European transition possible. Through scholarships, development teams, and partnerships with European squads, the AIS offers a clear pathway. From junior racing in Australia to climbing the Dolomites in a World Tour jersey. It's a bridge few nations build so intentionally. And that bridge has carried riders like Richie Porte, Rohan Dennis, and Jai Hindley all the way to the Grand Tour podiums. So why is this so powerful? Because Aussie riders build the engine at home, on flat, windy roads under the hot sun. Then they refine it in Europe, where they learn altitude, elevation pacing, and climbing rhythm. This two-phase development, power first, climbing second, gives them a unique edge. They're not one-dimensional climbers, they're all around threats. And by the time they reach the World Tour, they've already proven they can handle pressure, pain, and being outsiders in a foreign world. That makes them dangerous. That makes them champions. But we can't ignore the culture. Aussies are famous for their no-nonsense work ethic, dry humour, and mental toughness. Traits that are invaluable in cycling. This is a country that reveres endurance. From the Ironman triathlons to outback ultramarathons, pushing limits is part of the national DNA. Add in the isolation of living far from Europe's cycling heart, and you get riders who are hungrier, grittier, and more adaptable than most. Cadel Evans once said, "If you want something bad enough, it doesn't matter where you come from. You'll find a way." Here's the twist. Maybe not having mountains is actually an advantage. In mountainous nations, kids grow up climbing, but often lack the flatland discipline, aerodynamic positioning, or tactical speed needed for full-spectrum racing. Australia flips the script. Riders are forced to be complete cyclists, learning time trialling, sprinting, and breakaway tactics. When they finally train in the mountains, they bring a broader skill set than many of their peers. Plus, coming from a non-traditional cycling nation fuels a chip-on-the-shoulder mentality. They're not expected to win, so when they do, it shocks the peloton. Australia doesn't need the Alps to build champions. It builds them through science, strategy, and sheer grit. Through heat and wind, through lonely miles on flat roads, through track laps and tactical IQ, and most of all, through a deep, stubborn belief that where you start doesn't define where you can go. If you found this journey fascinating, we'd love to hear from you. Which Aussie rider inspires you the most? Drop a comment, hit that like button, and subscribe for more cycling stories that go beyond the headlines. This is Bike Flicks, and we'll see you on the next climb. Thanks for watching.